Today, I have a demonstration for you that highlights how easy it is to set up a disaster recovery landing zone in IBM VPC for your on-premise or hybrid data center. So I've gone ahead and deployed the RackWare engine from the IBM Marketplace listing, and we can take a look here in our destination or our DR region, and this is the RackWare engine that was deployed. I have several source servers set up across multiple environments that we're going to be protecting into this disaster recovery region. I have some on-prem resources here running in our VMware environment in our lab. I have a host running in Oracle OCI, and I've got a few workloads that are running in a different region within IBM VPC. So we're going to protect all of these. So we'll go ahead and we'll get started. This is the RackWare interface that's going to be driving the entire disaster recovery workflow. So as part of my initial configuration, I'll go ahead and I will give the RackWare engine my IBM Cloud credentials, and this will allow it to provision resources into my target environment. So the next thing I want to do is I want to add my source hosts to the RackWare engine's discovery list. So I'll go ahead and I will add my source hosts. And it will go ahead and validate connectivity to all of those hosts, and it will run a discover operation and grab us all of the information about those hosts. And these are the hosts that we're going to protect today. Now, I've set these up with two of the main workflows. We're going to do cold storage, where we're only going to protect the workloads in storage. And with one of those, we're going to do a hot active configuration where we actually have resources running. So we can take a look real quick. It gives a lot of information specific to the hosts themselves. We can see exactly what they are. This is my VMware host running in our lab. Gives you information relating to the file system and disk usage and a lot of other things. Dependency mappings here. We can see what the interconnectedness is between this host and others. And of course, if we had some more time, we could do a long-term analysis with usage, CPU, memory, network bandwidth, and things like that. Your source environment. It's all part of the workflow engine here. And we can take another look here. We'll take a Okay, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to create a wave, and this wave is going to capture all of our hosts and kind of get the storage seeded and even create that hot standby host. So call this capture and provision. We'll go ahead and select all of the hosts we want to protect. And then we'll get that storage seeded with all the data from our source systems. So first step here is what we call a stage 1 sync. And this is where the RackWare engine connects into the source hosts, and it actually syncs all of its used data to the RackWare data store itself, the storage volume that it has in our target environment here. Now, the first 3 hosts, we're going to capture and keep those only in storage as a cold storage option. We will not provision any resources, but I've configured the 4th host to actually be a part of a hot active configuration for disaster recovery. We haven't done that workflow yet, but we're setting that up, and it is going to provision our target resource. So this will have a resource up and running so we can have the most aggressive RPO and RTO times available. So we can see the RackWare engine has captured the data and it is now provisioning the target resource here. So take a quick look. So now that we've completed our initial seeding of all of our source hosts, including creating that target host, we'll go ahead and create our disaster recovery policies. We'll set up the RPO and the RTO schedules. So come over here to DR policy. And we'll go ahead and we'll create a new policy. Do the cold policy first. Our parallel sync count, we're going to go ahead and sync all of those at the same time. And we'll set up an RPO schedule. I'll just call this RPO 30. That's my favorite. And we'll set up by frequency. And we'll set this to 30 minutes. So this is your RPO sync times. You can, of course, set that all the way down to 5 minutes. Or if you just want a continuous sync, you just choose continuous. So create as many different policies as you want. Each one can be different. We'll just set this to 30 minutes for now. And then who should be emailed for all of the notifications. That's it. That's our cold DR policy with our schedule. And the next thing we'll do is we'll go ahead and add our hosts to this policy. So here's where our tags come in handy. So I added some tags you saw earlier, hot DR, cold DR, different tiers for these. So we'll go ahead and say, well, this is our cold DR policy. Makes a big difference when you have 2, 3, 4, 500 machines to protect, of course. So we'll go ahead and we'll grab all the cold DR machines and we'll add those. Perfect. And then let's start our policy. So this will start the Delta syncs. And we are protected. That is all we need to protect the hosts. We're not done with the workflow, but that is the initial seeding and DR policy configuration. So we'll go ahead and create another policy here for our hot active machine. And then we'll add that host to this hot policy. Okay, so we've gone ahead and created this workflow. We'll go ahead and turn on the second policy also, so to perform the Delta syncs. And we can see that our initial cold policy has already kicked off the first Delta sync. So it's grabbing any of that change data from the initial synchronization here. And it can be very, very fast. There's not a lot going on with those hosts here, but we can see our Delta sync took all of 29 seconds to grab that new data. This is actually a database that's doing a few things here, so it takes a little bit longer. Okay. After we have created our disaster recovery policies, we'll go ahead and we will create our retention policy. So we'll come over here, and this is the backup and restore capability that comes with the RackWare's disaster recovery workflow. So typical backup software that you would normally see. So we'll go ahead and set up our retention policies. We'll just say hourly for now. And I'm going to set this up so every hour we will take a snapshot of whatever images we load into this retention policy. And I'm going to keep 24 individual hourly snapshots so I can roll back 24 individual hours. And then I'll keep a daily snapshot, and I'm going to keep those for 45 days. So I will be able to roll back and deploy from any of these points in time once those snapshots have been created. Not only can I roll back entire systems from source to target environment or create entire new virtual machines or VSIs from a snapshot, but I'll be able to browse the directory structure, go back in time and restore individual files and folders. We'll look at that. So after I've created my policy, I'll go ahead and apply my images. Select all of our images. Okay, and now I have protected all of my workloads, not only with a disaster recovery workflow for the RPO and RTO for the hot standby machine, but I've now configured my backup retention policies, and as the Delta syncs happen, we will start taking point-in-time snapshots according to this schedule. We can take a look at this retention policy, and we can see the images that are loaded in there and the current versions that are retained within the policy itself. So the next thing we want to do is we want to go ahead and configure our failover group. So the failover group is what gives us the kind of runbook workflow tells us what groups we might want to fail over together. So we're capturing everything. We've got all this data. We can do anything we want with it. So let's go ahead and set that up. So we'll create a failover group, and we'll call this cold. And we'll go ahead and filter on my cold systems. Okay, so I have these three systems all cold because we are not deploying those. They are not running. We only have one hot machine. Um, and we only want these deployed during a test or an actual disaster event where we will deploy the resources. So we have a lot of options here within this workflow where we can set different tiers. So I kind of have some tags with tiers. If I wanted to set a specific boot order, I could go ahead and say this is tier 0, boot up first, and this one is tier 1, boot up second, and things like that. So if you wanted to go ahead and separate these out and have one host boot up before the others will wait for the initial host to actually come online before they will boot up. You set that with tiers, and you can set boot delays. Oh, and a lot of other things. We got different profiles we can set up. We're not going to talk about that, but anything you can think of has probably been thought of and can be put as part of this workflow, including plugins and scripts and other things that need to be triggered, all with the single failover group itself. So we'll just do this, keep it simple for now. We'll add this here, these three hosts to our cold failover group. And then we'll create our other failover group here. So failover group, we'll do our hot. We have our one machine here. We'll add this one. And now we are fully protected. That is the workflow. That's all you need to do to protect your running workloads from any environment, VMware, KVM, Oracle, Amazon, what have you, on-prem, all into IBM VPC. We can take a quick look here when I mentioned those images, those snapshot versions here. If I wanted to browse a snapshot version, we'll go ahead and do file restore. I would have a list of versions that I could look through. And of course, I can go ahead and browse the directory structure, and it would allow me to restore individual files back to the source host. If there was a target host, it would show here, or I can even copy those files to the RackWare engine, put them in /temp, and look at them later. So you can restore files at any point in time from any of the snapshots, or you can restore an entire snapshot, creating a new virtual machine from that point in time snapshot. I'm going to show you what that looks like. So here we've been protecting our workloads for some amount of time, and we decide we want to test our workflow, or we have a true disaster event. So if you remember, we just have our RackWare engine running. We have our hot continuous sync going right now, but we don't have those cold storage hosts running. So all I need to do is come over here to my cold failover group. I'll set my parallel count to 0 so they all sync at the same time, and I simply have to press failover. Pressing failover, I can choose sync the entire groups, selected hosts, override the boot order, and this is where I would select test mode. I'll talk about that in a second, but right now we're going to do a true failover for all three of those hosts. Okay, so what happens once you've triggered this failover is the RackWare engine will query the image that it has stored in its data store, and it will then provision the resources into IBM VSI using the data from the data store that already lives here. So we'll go ahead and take a quick look. Of course, we have a lot of information here. You can expand almost any of these items, and you can get additional information about what's happening during the sync process. So I can see here that we've queried our image living in the RackWare engine, and we're gone ahead and started provisioning our resources here. So let's take a quick look, see if those are going. Oh yeah, absolutely. So we can see now, here's our Red Hat that was up and running, and here are our new hosts that are being provisioned right now. Go ahead and wait for that to complete. So our failover has completed for all three hosts, and we can do a quick check here. Remember, we had our target machine that was built. I have a small database running here. And there we are. So that's our database up and running with its application, all failed over into our IBM VPC. Again, thank you for joining today.